Monday morning arrived with grey clouds and the promise of rain, which seemed perfect for what I was about to do. I sat in my car outside the Morrison Building Company office, watching employees arrive for another day of work at a company that was slowly dying. I could see the stress on their faces as they walked through the parking lot. These were good people who didn't deserve to lose their jobs because of one person's terrible decisions. That's why I had decided to give Brittany one last chance to do the right thing before I played my final card. At exactly 9 a.m., I called the main office number. Jenny, the receptionist who had somehow survived all the layoffs, answered the phone. Morrison Building Company, this is Jenny speaking. Hi Jenny, it's David Harrison. I was wondering if I could speak with Brittany about something important. There was a long pause. Oh, hi David. I'm not sure if she'll take your call. She's been really stressed lately, and she doesn't like talking about, the people who used to work here. Just tell her I have information that could help save the company. I think she'll want to hear what I have to say. Another pause, then Jenny put me on hold. I could hear muffled voices in the background, probably Jenny explaining that I was on the phone. After about 3 minutes, Brittany's voice came through the speaker. What do you want, David? Her tone was cold and unfriendly, like I was bothering her just by calling. Hello, Brittany. I heard the company is having some financial difficulties, and I wanted to offer my help. She laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. Help? You want to help? That's rich, David. The last thing I need is advice from someone I had to fire. I took a deep breath and tried to stay calm. Brittany, I know you're angry about something, but I'm not sure what I did wrong. Your father asked me to help you succeed, and that's all I ever tried to do. Don't you dare mention my father, she snapped. He might have trusted you, but I saw right through your act. You were just waiting for your chance to take over the company yourself. This was news to me. What are you talking about? I never wanted to take over anything. I was happy being a project manager. Please. Everyone could see how you were always trying to make yourself look important. Always staying late, always volunteering for extra work, always making sure Dad noticed how dedicated you were. You thought you could manipulate your way into running this place. I was stunned. Brittany had completely misunderstood everything about my relationship with her father and my commitment to the company. She had convinced herself that my hard work was some kind of scheme to steal her inheritance. Brittany, that's not true at all. I worked hard because I cared about the company and respected your father. I never wanted his job or your job. Right. That's why you've been trying to steal our clients, isn't it? Don't think I don't know that Riverside Construction hired you specifically to take our contracts. I needed a job to support my family. You fired me, remember? Was I supposed to just sit at home and starve? You could have found work somewhere else, instead of deliberately trying to destroy everything my father built. This conversation was going much worse than I had expected. Brittany wasn't just stubborn or proud, she had created a completely false narrative about my motives and actions. She genuinely believed that I was some kind of villain who had been plotting against her family. Brittany, listen to me. I called because I want to help save Morrison Building Company. Despite everything that's happened between us, I still respect your father's memory and I don't want to see his life's work destroyed. I don't need your help, David, and I certainly don't trust you. Whatever scheme you're planning, you can forget it. I decided to try a different approach. What if I told you there was a way to solve your financial problems? A way to make enough money to pay off all your debts and keep the company running? I'd say you're lying, just like you've been lying about everything else. I'm not lying. Your father shared something with me before he died, something about the company's property that could be worth millions of dollars. There was a long silence. I could almost hear Brittany thinking, probably wondering if I was telling the truth or trying to trick her somehow. What kind of something? She finally asked, her voice slightly less hostile. I'd rather explain it in person. Can we meet somewhere to talk? Maybe grab coffee like we used to do when we were working together? No. If you have something to say, you can say it right now over the phone. I sighed. Brittany was making this much harder than it needed to be, but I decided to tell her anyway. Maybe when she understood what was at stake, she would be willing to listen to reason. There's a massive limestone deposit under the company property, I said. High-quality stone that could be worth $20 to $30 million if it's mined properly. Another long silence. Then Brittany started laughing, but it was a bitter, angry laugh. That's your big plan? You want me to believe there's some kind of treasure buried under our building? Do you think I'm stupid, David? It's not buried treasure. It's limestone, and it's very real. Your father had geological surveys done when he bought the property 20 years ago. He showed me the reports. You're lying. My father never mentioned anything about mining or limestone or geological surveys. He didn't tell you because he didn't think it was important at the time. The construction business was doing well, and mining is a completely different industry. But he kept the reports, and he gave me copies in case something ever happened to him. Even if this ridiculous story were true, which it isn't, what does it have to do with you? Why would you care about helping my company? This was the moment of truth. I could either continue trying to help Brittany, or I could reveal what I had done and teach her the lesson she deserved. Because I care about the people who still work there, because I made a promise to your father, and because I believe people deserve second chances, even people who have treated me badly. How noble of you, Brittany said sarcastically. Let me guess, you want me to hire you back so you can manage this imaginary mining operation? No, Brittany, I want you to understand that you've made some serious mistakes, and I'm offering you a chance to fix them before it's too late. The only mistake I made was not firing you sooner. You're delusional if you think I'm going to fall for whatever scam you're trying to pull. It's not a scam. But if you're not interested in saving your company, that's your choice. I just wanted to give you the option. My company doesn't need saving from someone like you. We're going through a rough patch, but we'll figure it out on our own. I felt my patience running out. I had tried to be generous and give Brittany a way to save face while also saving her company, but she was too proud and too blinded by her false assumptions to accept help. All right, Brittany, I tried to do this the easy way, but you're not making it possible. Let me ask you something. Have you been reading your mail carefully lately? What kind of question is that? Of course I read my mail. Have you gotten any letters from the State Mining Commission? There was a pause. I might have gotten something like that. Why? My heart started beating faster. This was it. This was the moment when Brittany Morrison was going to learn exactly how much her cruelty had cost her. You might want to go find that letter and read it very carefully. And when you do, you're going to understand why calling me was the smartest thing you could have done today. What are you talking about, David? Stop speaking in riddles and tell me what's going on. 8 weeks ago, I applied for mining rights to the limestone deposit under your property. The state sent you a notice giving you 60 days to respond. You ignored it, which means those rights now belong to me. The silence on the other end of the phone was deafening. I could practically hear Brittany's brain trying to process what I had just told her. That's impossible. You can't just steal someone's property. I'm not stealing your property. You still own the land and the buildings. But I now own the rights to everything underneath the surface, including about $20 million worth of limestone. You're lying. This is some kind of trick. Check your mail, Brittany. Look for an official letter from the State Mining Commission dated about 8 weeks ago. It explains everything. I heard the sound of papers rustling, then Brittany's voice became muffled as she apparently put me on hold and went to look for the letter. After about 5 minutes, she came back on the line, and her voice was completely different. I found it, she whispered. The letter. It says someone applied for mining rights and we had 60 days to respond. That's right. And since you didn't respond, the rights are now mine. But this can't be legal. There has to be some way to challenge this or appeal it. The law is very clear, Brittany. Property owners have 60 days to respond to mining rights applications. After that, the rights are automatically granted to the applicant. You can talk to a lawyer if you want, but I think you'll find that everything was done properly. This is ridiculous. I don't even believe there's any limestone under our property. Your father had core samples taken 20 years ago. The deposit is massive and extremely high quality. I've already had mining engineers review the geological reports, and they estimate we could extract about 800,000 tons of limestone over the next 10 years. There is no we, David. I'll fight this in court. I'll sue you for fraud and theft and whatever else my lawyers can think of. You can try, but you'll lose. And while you're wasting money on lawyers, I'll be setting up mining operations and selling limestone to construction companies all over the state. Wait, Brittany said, and I could hear the desperation creeping into her voice. Wait, you said you wanted to help save the company. If you really meant that, we can work something out. Now we were getting somewhere. What kind of arrangement did you have in mind? I don't know. Maybe we could be partners. We could split the mining profits 50-50? I laughed. Brittany, you fired me. You told me I was worthless and escorted me out with security. Now you want to be my partner. I might have been hasty about that. Maybe there was a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? You fired 10 loyal employees in one day, including people who had worked for your father for over a decade. You destroyed the culture that made Morrison Building Company successful. You treated people like they were disposable. That wasn't a misunderstanding, that was cruel and stupid. I was trying to make the company more efficient. I was trying to reduce costs and improve profits. How did that work out for you? From what I hear, you're about to go bankrupt because you got rid of everyone who actually knew how to run construction projects. Things have been challenging, but we can turn it around. Not without the mining revenue, you can't. That limestone is probably the only thing that could generate enough cash to save Morrison Building Company. Then let's work together. You get your mining rights, and I get to save my father's company. Everyone wins. I had to admire her desperation, but I wasn't ready to make any deals yet. Brittany still hadn't admitted that she was wrong or apologized for how she had treated people. Why should I trust you, Brittany? You've already proven that you'll throw people away the moment you think you don't need them anymore. Because I'm different now. Because I've learned from my mistakes. What mistakes? You haven't admitted to making any mistakes. You still think firing me was justified. There was a long pause. Maybe I was wrong about your motives. Maybe you really were just trying to do your job. Maybe. Another pause. Okay, I was wrong. I was wrong about you, and I was wrong to fire you. Is that what you want to hear? It's a start. But what about everyone else? What about Tom Williams and Jennifer Lopez and Maria Santos and all the other people whose lives you disrupted for no good reason? I thought we needed to reduce staff to stay competitive. You thought wrong. Those people made Morrison Building Company successful. They were loyal and hardworking, and they deserved better than being thrown out like garbage. I know that now. I've seen what happened to our projects after they left. I've seen how the clients have reacted. I know I made mistakes. This was progress, but I wasn't satisfied yet. So what are you going to do about it? What do you mean? If you really understand that you made mistakes, what are you going to do to fix them? Are you going to rehire the people you fired? Are you going to apologize to them? Are you going to change the way you treat employees? I don't know if I can afford to rehire everyone. The company is in bad financial shape right now. That's convenient. So you're sorry, but not sorry enough to actually fix the damage you caused. It's not that simple, David. I want to do the right thing, but I have to think about the company's survival too. I realized that Brittany still didn't get it. She was willing to admit she was wrong when it might benefit her, but she wasn't willing to take real responsibility for the consequences of her actions. You know what, Brittany? I think this conversation is over. You had a chance to do the right thing, and you're still making excuses. Wait, please don't hang up. What do you want from me? What will it take for you to work with me instead of against me? What I wanted was justice. What I wanted was for Brittany to understand that actions have consequences and that treating people badly would eventually come back to hurt her. But I also wanted to honor my promise to Robert Morrison, which meant giving his daughter one last chance to prove she could change. Here's what's going to happen, I said. I'm going to give you exactly 24 hours to think about this situation. Tomorrow at 9 a.m., I want you to call me back with a proposal for how you're going to fix the mess you've made. What kind of proposal? Figure it out. You went to business school, right? You should be smart enough to come up with a plan that addresses the damage you've caused to your employees and makes amends for the way you've treated people. And if I do that, you'll consider working with me on the mining rights? I'll consider it. But Brittany, this is your last chance. If you try to play games or make excuses or blame other people for your problems, I'm going to move forward with mining operations on my own. And when I do, you can watch your father's company die while I get rich from the land underneath it. That's not fair, David. That limestone has been under our property for 20 years. My father should have known about its value. Your father did know about its value. He told me about it because he trusted me to use the information wisely. He wanted someone to look out for the company's interests if something happened to him. Then why didn't he tell me? Maybe because he knew you weren't ready to handle that kind of responsibility. Maybe because he wanted you to learn the business first and prove that you could treat people with respect. I can learn. I can change. Just give me a chance. You've got 24 hours, Brittany. Don't waste them. I hung up the phone and sat back in my car seat, feeling a mixture of satisfaction and exhaustion. The conversation had gone pretty much as I expected, with Brittany initially being hostile and then becoming desperate when she realized what was at stake. But I wasn't sure if she really understood the lesson I was trying to teach her. She seemed more focused on saving herself than on making things right with the people she had hurt. Over the next few hours, I found it hard to concentrate on my work at Riverside Construction. I kept thinking about that phone call and wondering what Brittany would come up with. Would she actually try to make amends for her mistakes, or would she just try to find some way to manipulate the situation to her advantage? That evening, Carlos called me with some interesting news. David, something weird is happening at Morrison Building Company today. Brittany has been locked in her office all afternoon, making phone calls and going through old files. She had Jenny pull all the personnel records for everyone who was fired. Did she say why? No, but she looked really stressed out. More stressed than usual, I mean. And she kept asking Jenny about mail from the state government. Do you know what that's about? I smiled. She's probably just reviewing company policies or something. Don't worry about it. There's something else. Tom Williams got a phone call this afternoon from someone at Morrison Building Company asking if he'd be interested in coming back to work. He said the person sounded desperate. That's interesting. What did Tom tell them? He said he'd think about it, but honestly, I don't think he trusts Brittany after the way she fired him. Most of the guys who got laid off are pretty bitter about the whole thing. This was exactly what I had hoped would happen. Brittany was starting to realize that she needed the people she had fired, but she was going to have to work hard to convince them to come back. The next morning, I arrived at work early and sat in my truck waiting for Brittany's call. At exactly 9 a.m., my phone rang. David, it's Brittany. I've been thinking about what you said, and I have a proposal. I'm listening. First, I want to officially apologize for firing you and for the way I treated you. I was wrong, and I'm sorry. Okay, what else? I've decided to offer jobs back to everyone I laid off. Same positions, same pay, with a $2,000 bonus for the inconvenience I caused them. This was a good start, but I wanted to hear more. What about changing the way you manage people? What about the policies that made everyone miserable? I'm going to go back to the way my father ran things. Fair overtime pay, reasonable sick leave, and no more treating employees like they are expendable. And what about the mining rights? What's your proposal for that? I'd like to form a partnership. Morrison Building Company and your mining company would split the profits 60-40, with you getting the larger share since you secured the rights. I was surprised. This was actually a reasonable offer, much better than I had expected from someone as proud as Brittany. Why should I trust that you'll stick to this agreement? What's to stop you from changing your mind again once the company is profitable? Because I've learned my lesson, David. I've seen what happens when you treat people badly. I've seen how quickly everything can fall apart when you lose good employees. I don't want to make those mistakes again. Prove it. What do you mean? I want you to personally apologize to every person you fired. I want you to admit that you were wrong and ask for their forgiveness. And I want you to do it in front of all the other employees, so everyone understands that things are really going to change. There was a long silence. That's pretty humiliating, David. Good. Humiliation builds character. Besides, it's nothing compared to the humiliation those people felt when they were escorted out of the building after years of loyal service. And if I do this, you'll agree to the partnership? I thought about it for a moment. Brittany seemed genuinely sorry, and her offer was fair, but I wanted to make sure she understood that this was about more than just money. If you do this, and if the people you fired actually believe you're sincere, then yes, I'll consider the partnership. But Brittany, this isn't just about business. This is about learning to treat people with respect and dignity. If you ever go back to your old ways, our deal is off. I understand. I won't let you down. We'll see. When are you planning to make these apologies? This afternoon. I've already called a company meeting for 3 p.m. Everyone who still works here will be there, and I've asked the people I fired to come in as well. Good. I'll be there too. You will? Absolutely. I want to hear these apologies myself, and I want to see how people react. This is your chance to prove that you've really changed, Brittany. Don't blow it. After I hung up, I called Tom Williams and some of the other people who had been fired to let them know what was happening. Are you serious? Tom asked. Brittany Morrison is going to apologize to us in front of everyone? That's what she said. Are you going to go? I wouldn't miss it for the world. After the way she treated us, this should be interesting. At 2:45 p.m., I walked into the Morrison Building Company conference room for the first time since the day I was fired. The atmosphere was tense, with current employees sitting on one side of the room and former employees on the other side. Everyone was wondering what Brittany was going to say and whether this was some kind of trick. Brittany walked into the room at exactly 3 p.m., looking nervous but determined. She was carrying a folder of papers, probably notes for her speech. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice shaking slightly. "I know this is unusual, but I have some important things to say, and I wanted everyone to hear them at the same time." She took a deep breath and looked around the room. "Over the past few months, I've made some terrible decisions that have hurt this company and hurt the people who work here. I fired good, loyal employees for bad reasons, and I changed policies that made everyone's job harder and less enjoyable. So far, so good. People were listening intently, probably wondering if this was leading up to more bad news. I was wrong, Brittany continued, her voice getting stronger. I was wrong about a lot of things, but most importantly, I was wrong about the value of experienced, dedicated employees. I thought I could make the company more efficient by cutting costs and eliminating positions, but all I did was destroy the culture that made Morrison Building Company successful. She turned to face the group of former employees. To everyone I fired, I owe you a sincere apology. You didn't deserve to be treated the way I treated you. You gave years of your lives to this company, and I repaid your loyalty by throwing you out like you didn't matter. I could see tears in some people's eyes. These weren't just words to them, these were acknowledgments of real pain and injustice they had experienced. Tom Williams, Brittany said, looking directly at him, you maintained our equipment perfectly for 12 years, and I fired you to save money on your salary. That was stupid and cruel, and I'm sorry. Tom nodded but didn't say anything. His expression was hard to read. Jennifer Lopez, you handled our administrative work with skill and dedication, and I eliminated your position because some consultant told me we didn't need an administrative assistant. I was wrong, and I'm sorry. One by one, Brittany went through the list of people she had fired, acknowledging each person's contributions and apologizing for the way they had been treated. When she got to me, she paused for a long moment. David Harrison, she said, you were the best employee this company ever had. You were loyal, hardworking, and dedicated to preserving everything my father built. I fired you because I was jealous of your relationship with him and because I was too proud to admit that I needed your help. I was completely wrong about your character and your motives, and I'm deeply sorry for the way I treated you. The room was completely silent. Everyone was staring at Brittany, probably shocked that she was being so honest and vulnerable. But apologies aren't enough, she continued. I want to offer jobs back to everyone I fired, at the same salary you were making before, plus a $2,000 bonus for the hardship I caused you. I also want to restore all the policies and benefits that made this a good place to work. Now people started murmuring and looking at each other. This was more than anyone had expected. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness or your trust, Brittany said, but I'm asking for a chance to prove that I've learned from my mistakes. Morrison Building Company was my father's life work, and I almost destroyed it because of my arrogance and poor judgment. Help me rebuild it the right way. She sat down, and the room remained silent for several long minutes. Finally, Tom Williams stood up. This is a nice speech, Brittany, he said, but how do we know you won't just fire us again the next time you decide to make changes? It was a fair question, and everyone waited to see how Brittany would answer. You don't know, she admitted. All I can do is promise that I'll never again make important decisions without consulting the people who will be affected by them, and if I ever start treating employees badly again, I hope you'll call me out on it. What about David? Asked Jennifer Lopez. Are you offering him his job back too? Brittany looked at me. David has been offered a position, but he's considering other options. That's his choice to make. For the next hour, people asked questions and shared their feelings about what had happened. Some of the former employees were willing to consider coming back, while others said they needed time to think about it. But everyone seemed to appreciate Brittany's honesty and the fact that she had publicly admitted her mistakes. As the meeting broke up, Brittany approached me. So what do you think? She asked. Did I do okay? You did better than I expected, I admitted. That took courage. Does this mean you'll accept the partnership proposal? I looked around the room at people hugging each other and making plans to return to work. For the first time in months, there was hope and positive energy in the Morrison Building Company offices. Let's talk about the details tomorrow, I said. But Brittany, I want you to remember something. This isn't just about mining rights or business partnerships. This is about treating people right and keeping your word. If you can do that, we'll get along fine. As I walked out of the building that day, I felt like Robert Morrison would have been proud of what had happened. His daughter had finally learned the lesson he had tried to teach her about the importance of respecting and valuing good employees. But the story wasn't over yet. There was still the matter of actually setting up the mining operation and making sure Brittany kept her promises. And as I was about to discover, Brittany Morrison still had a few surprises left in store for me. Chapter 4. The next morning, I woke up feeling optimistic for the first time in months. Brittany's public apology had seemed genuine, and most of the fired employees were seriously considering returning to Morrison Building Company. It looked like we might actually be able to work together to save Robert's legacy while also making everyone wealthy from the limestone mining operation. But as I was getting ready for work, my phone rang. It was Mike Patterson from the State Mining Commission, and he sounded worried. David, we need to talk. Can you come to my office this morning? There's been a development with your mining rights application. My heart sank. What kind of development? I'd rather explain it in person. How soon can you get here? An hour later, I was sitting in Mike's office while he spread several official documents across his desk. His expression was serious, and I could tell the news wasn't good. David, I'm really sorry to have to tell you this, but there's a problem with your mining rights. A big problem. What do you mean? Mike pointed to one of the documents. Yesterday afternoon, we received a formal challenge to your mining rights from Morrison Building Company. They are claiming that your application was based on fraudulent information. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. Fraudulent information? Everything I submitted was accurate and legal. I know, and that's not the issue. The challenge isn't about the geological surveys or the application process. It's about something else entirely. Mike pulled out another document. Morrison Building Company is claiming that you obtained the geological survey information illegally, through corporate espionage or theft of trade secrets. That's ridiculous. Robert Morrison gave me those documents himself. He wanted me to have them. Can you prove that? Do you have any written documentation showing that Robert Morrison authorized you to have those surveys? I thought about it for a moment. Robert had given me the documents verbally, as a personal favor and a gesture of trust. We had never written anything down or signed any papers. No, I don't have written proof, but it's the truth. Robert trusted me with that information because he wanted someone to know about it if something happened to him. Mike looked sympathetic but concerned. David, I believe you, but without written documentation, this becomes a he said she said situation. And since Robert Morrison is deceased, he can't testify on your behalf. So what does this mean for my mining rights? The challenge automatically puts a hold on your rights until the matter can be resolved. You can't begin any mining operations until this is settled, which could take months or even years if it goes to court. I felt my carefully planned revenge crumbling around me. Brittany had seemed so sincere yesterday, so genuinely sorry for her mistakes. But apparently, she had been planning this challenge all along. Mike, is there any way to fight this? Any way to prove that I obtained the information legally? You could hire a lawyer and challenge their challenge, but it would be expensive and time-consuming. And honestly, without Robert Morrison here to back up your story, it would be hard to prove. I thanked Mike and left his office feeling betrayed and furious. Brittany had played me perfectly, making me think she had learned her lesson while secretly planning to destroy my mining rights. She had apologized in public, offered to rehire everyone, and made me believe she had changed, all while preparing to stab me in the back. As I drove back toward Morrison Building Company, my phone rang. It was Brittany, and she sounded cheerful and friendly. David, good morning. I wanted to call and thank you again for giving me the chance to make things right yesterday. The meeting went really well, don't you think? Cut the act, Brittany. I know what you did. What are you talking about? The legal challenge to my mining rights. Did you really think I wouldn't find out about it? There was a long pause. Oh, that. David, I can explain. I'm sure you can. You played me perfectly, didn't you? The fake apologies, the crocodile tears, the promises to change. It was all just a distraction while you figured out how to steal back the mining rights. It wasn't like that, David. The apologies were real. I really am sorry for how I treated everyone, but not sorry enough to let me keep the mining rights I legally obtained. David, please let me explain. After our phone call yesterday, I talked to a lawyer about the mining situation. He's the one who suggested challenging your application. So you're blaming your lawyer now? No, I'm taking responsibility. But David, you have to understand my position. That limestone deposit could be worth millions of dollars. It could save my company and provide jobs for dozens of people. I couldn't just give that up without a fight. You didn't have to give it up. I offered you a partnership. We could have worked together and both made money. I know, and I was seriously considering it. But my lawyer said there might be legal issues with how you obtained the geological surveys. He said I had a duty to protect the company's interests. I was so angry I could barely speak. Your duty was to honor your father's wishes and treat people with respect. Instead, you decided to betray the one person who was trying to help you. David, I'm not trying to betray you. The legal challenge doesn't mean we can't still work together. Maybe we can find a different arrangement. What kind of arrangement? Well, if the challenge is successful and the mining rights revert back to Morrison Building Company, I'd be willing to hire you as a consultant for the mining operation. You'd get a good salary and a percentage of the profits. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was offering to hire me to help her mine the limestone that should have been mine in the first place. Let me get this straight. You're trying to steal my mining rights, and then you want to pay me to help you get rich from them? I wouldn't put it that way. I'd say I'm trying to protect my family's assets while still finding a way for both of us to benefit. Brittany, you're unbelievable. Yesterday I actually thought you had learned something about treating people right. But you're still the same selfish, manipulative person you always were. That's not fair, David. I am trying to do the right thing. I rehired everyone I fired, just like I promised. I apologized publicly and restored all the employee benefits. I kept every promise I made, except for the most important one. You promised to treat people with respect and honesty, and then you immediately went behind my back to destroy the mining rights deal. David, this is business. I have to protect my company's interests, even if it means making difficult decisions. No, Brittany, this is exactly what your father was afraid of. This is why he gave me those documents in the first place. He knew you weren't ready to handle important decisions because you still think business is just about making money and beating other people. My father never gave you those documents. That's just a story you made up to justify stealing company property. And there it was. Brittany's true feelings finally came out. She didn't believe me about her father, and she never had. All the apologies and promises had been just another manipulation. You know what, Brittany? You're right about one thing. This is business, and you just made a very bad business decision. What do you mean? I mean you're about to learn that I'm not as helpless as you think I am, and you're about to find out that betraying people has consequences. Are you threatening me, David? I'm not threatening you. I'm promising you. You want to play dirty? Fine, but don't expect me to just roll over and let you steal what's rightfully mine. I hung up the phone and immediately called Frank Riverside at my current job. Frank, I need to take a personal day today. There's something important I need to handle. Everything okay, David? It will be, but I need to make some phone calls and meet with some people. Take all the time you need. Just keep me posted if it's going to affect any of our projects. My first call was to Tom Williams, the equipment maintenance supervisor who Brittany had fired and then tried to rehire. Tom, it's David. Are you planning to go back to work for Morrison Building Company? I was thinking about it. Why? Because I just found out that Brittany Morrison is not the person she pretended to be yesterday. She's trying to screw me over on a business deal, and I think she'll eventually screw over everyone else too. I explained the situation with the mining rights and Brittany's legal challenge. Tom listened quietly, and I could hear him getting angrier as I told the story. That sounds exactly like something she would do, Tom said when I finished. Promise one thing and then do the opposite. You know what, David? I'm not going back to Morrison Building Company. I don't trust her. Good decision. Can you call some of the other guys and let them know what's happening? People deserve to know who they are really dealing with. Absolutely. Jennifer and Maria are going to be furious when they hear about this. My next call was to Carlos, who still worked at Morrison Building Company. Carlos, I need you to do me a favor, but you have to be careful about it. What kind of favor? I need you to find out everything you can about Morrison Building Company's current financial situation. How much debt do they have? What contracts are they working on? How much cash do they have in the bank? David, I could get in trouble for sharing that kind of information. I know, and I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. Brittany just tried to betray me on a major business deal, and I need to know how vulnerable the company really is. Carlos agreed to help, and I spent the rest of the morning making phone calls to lawyers, mining companies, and business contacts. I was putting together a plan that would teach Brittany Morrison the most expensive lesson of her life. That afternoon, Carlos called me back with information about Morrison Building Company's finances. David, they are in worse shape than I thought. They owe suppliers about $900,000. And they've got penalty clauses on 3 different contracts that could cost them another $400,000 if the projects aren't finished on time. How much cash do they have? Less than $100,000 in the bank, and Brittany has been paying 4 lawyers and consultants out of that money. What about the contracts they are currently working on? Are they making money on those? Not really. The profit margins are so thin that any delays or cost overruns wipe out the profits completely, and without experienced project managers like you, they are having delays on every job. This was perfect. Morrison Building Company was hanging by a thread financially, which meant Brittany was counting on the mining rights to save her. If I could find a way to block her legal challenge, she would be in serious trouble. That evening, I met with a lawyer who specialized in mining rights disputes. I explained the situation and asked about my options. This is an interesting case, the lawyer said after reviewing all the documents. The challenge is based on the claim that you obtained the geological surveys illegally, but there's no proof of that claim. So what can we do? We can file a counter-challenge arguing that Morrison Building Company is making false accusations without evidence. We can also argue that even if Robert Morrison verbally gave you the documents, that constitutes legal authorization. How long would that take? Maybe 6 months, maybe longer. These cases can drag on 4 years. I don't have years. I need to resolve this quickly. The lawyer thought for a moment. There might be another option. If you could find any evidence that Robert Morrison intended for you to have access to information about the limestone deposit, that would strengthen your position significantly. I thought about all my interactions with Robert Morrison over the years. Had he ever mentioned the limestone in front of other people? Had he ever written anything down that might support my story? Then I remembered something. About a year before Robert died, we had been meeting with a potential client who wanted to build a shopping center. The client had asked about the soil conditions on the property, and Robert had mentioned that previous geological surveys had shown excellent foundation conditions. David knows all about our soil surveys, Robert had said during that meeting. I've shared all that technical information with him in case clients have questions. The client was James Hartman from Hartman Development Group, the same company that had just awarded a big contract to Riverside Construction. If James remembered that conversation, it could prove that Robert Morrison had openly shared geological information with me. The next morning, I called James Hartman and asked if he remembered the meeting with Robert Morrison. Of course I remember, James said. That was for the shopping center project that never got built because of zoning issues. Why do you ask? Do you remember Robert Morrison saying anything about sharing geological survey information with me? Yeah, he said something like that. He said you were his go-to guy for technical questions and that he had shared all the soil reports and surveys with you. I remember thinking it was smart to have someone who understood all the technical aspects of construction sites. Would you be willing to put that in writing? Maybe sign an affidavit about what you remember from that conversation? Sure, I'd be happy to help. Robert Morrison was a good man, and I hate to see his company struggling the way it has been since his daughter took over. With James Hartman's affidavit, I had evidence that Robert Morrison had publicly acknowledged sharing geological information with me. It wasn't perfect proof, but it was much stronger than just my word against Brittany's accusations. I immediately sent the affidavit to my lawyer, who filed a counter-challenge with the State Mining Commission. We argued that Morrison Building Company's challenge was baseless and designed to delay my legitimate mining rights while their company used the time to steal the economic benefits of the limestone deposit. 3 days later, Mike Patterson called me with an update. David, this is unusual, but the Mining Commission has decided to hold an expedited hearing on your case. Both sides will present their arguments next Friday, and they'll make a decision within a week after that. That's fast. Why are they rushing it? Because your lawyer made a good point about Morrison Building Company using legal challenges to delay legitimate mining operations. The Commission doesn't want to set a precedent that property owners can make false accusations just to tie up mining rights applications. Friday's hearing was held in a small conference room at the State Office building. Brittany was there with 2 expensive-looking lawyers, while I had my one lawyer and James Hartman as a witness. Brittany's lawyers argued that the geological surveys were proprietary company information and that I had no right to use them for my mining application. They claimed that even if Robert Morrison had verbally shared some information with me, that didn't give me legal ownership of the documents. My lawyer argued that Robert Morrison had openly and publicly acknowledged sharing geological information with me, as proven by James Hartman's testimony. He also pointed out that Brittany's legal challenge was filed only after she realized how valuable the mining rights were, suggesting that it was motivated by greed rather than legitimate legal concerns. The hearing lasted about 3 hours, with both sides presenting their evidence and arguments. At the end, the Mining Commission panel said they would review everything and make a decision within a week. During that week of waiting, Tom Williams called me with some interesting news. David, you're not going to believe this. Morrison Building Company just lost another big contract. The client fired them for being behind schedule and hired a different contractor to finish the work. Which contract? The office building renovation downtown. That was worth about $800,000, and now they have to pay penalty fees too. How's Brittany handling it? Not well. She's been screaming at people and blaming everyone else for the company's problems. Most of the people she rehired are already talking about quitting again. This was exactly what I had expected. Brittany hadn't really changed, she had just pretended to change when it served her purposes. As soon as she faced real pressure, she reverted to her old patterns of treating people badly and refusing to take responsibility for her mistakes. On Thursday, exactly 1 week after the hearing, Mike Patterson called me with the Mining Commission's decision. "David, you won. The commission ruled that Morrison Building Company's challenge was without merit and that your mining rights are valid and enforceable." I felt a huge wave of relief and satisfaction. "So I can start mining operations?" "Yes, as soon as you get the necessary permits and environmental clearances." "Congratulations, David. You've got yourself a potentially very profitable business." After I hung up, I sat in my car for a few minutes just absorbing what had happened. I had won. Despite Brittany's attempts to cheat me out of the mining rights, justice had prevailed. I was now the legal owner of millions of dollars worth of limestone, and there was nothing she could do to stop me. But I wasn't ready to celebrate yet. There was still one more thing I needed to do. I drove to Morrison Building Company and walked into the main office for what I knew would be the last time. Jenny, the receptionist, looked surprised to see me. "Hi David, are you here to see Brittany?" "Yes, please tell her I'm here." "And Jenny, you might want to start looking for another job. Things are about to get very difficult around here." Jenny's eyes widened, but she called Brittany's office. A few minutes later, Brittany came out looking tired and stressed. She had clearly been expecting this conversation. "I heard about the Mining Commission's decision," she said without any greeting. "Then you know that I own the mining rights fair and square, and there's nothing you can do about it." "David, we can still work something out. I know I made mistakes with the legal challenge, but we can put that behind us and focus on making money together." I laughed. "Brittany, you still don't get it, do you? This was never just about money. This was about learning to treat people with respect and honesty. You failed that test completely. I was trying to protect my company. You were trying to cheat me out of something I had earned legally, and in the process, you've destroyed any chance of us working together. So what happens now? Now you get to watch your father's company die while I get rich from the land underneath it. You had multiple chances to do the right thing, and you chose greed and deception every time." Brittany's face went pale. "David, please. I'll do anything. I'll give you a bigger share of the profits. I'll put you in charge of the whole mining operation, whatever you want. What I want is for you to understand that actions have consequences. You fired me because you thought I was trying to take advantage of your family. Then you tried to steal my mining rights because you thought I was trying to take advantage of your company. But the truth is, I was the one person who could have saved Morrison Building Company, and you threw me away. I know that now. I've learned my lesson." "No, you haven't. You've learned that I'm more powerful than you thought, but you haven't learned anything about treating people right. If you had really learned that lesson, you never would have tried to cheat me out of the mining rights." I turned to leave, but Brittany grabbed my arm. "Wait. What if I sell you the whole company? You could own Morrison Building Company and run it however you want." "I don't want your company, Brittany. I've got my own business now, with people who appreciate me and treat me well. Morrison Building Company is your problem to solve. But without the mining revenue, we'll go bankrupt within a month. Then you'll go bankrupt. Maybe whoever buys the assets will treat employees better than you did." As I walked toward the door, I heard Brittany starting to cry. Part of me felt sorry for her, but a bigger part of me felt that she was finally getting what she deserved. "David," she called after me, "what would my father think about this? Would he want you to destroy his life's work just to punish me?" I stopped and turned around. "Your father would think that you learned exactly the lesson he wanted you to learn. He would think that losing the company is a small price to pay for understanding how important it is to treat people with kindness and respect. But I do understand that now." "No, Brittany, if you really understood it, you would have understood it before you tried to cheat me. You would have understood it before you fired loyal employees. You would have understood it before you destroyed everything your father built." I walked out of Morrison Building Company for the final time, leaving Brittany crying in the lobby. As I drove away, I felt a complex mixture of emotions. I was satisfied that justice had been done and that Brittany had learned an expensive lesson about the consequences of treating people badly, but I was also sad that Robert Morrison's company would probably not survive. 6 months later, I was standing on the same property where Morrison Building Company used to be, watching huge mining trucks extract limestone from the quarry my company had built. Morrison Building Company had indeed gone bankrupt, and I had bought their property at a foreclosure auction for a fraction of its value. The limestone mining operation was even more profitable than I had expected. We were producing about 2,000 tons of high-quality stone per week and selling it to construction companies across 3 states. My company, Millbrook Limestone Extraction, was already making more money than Morrison Building Company had ever made in its best years. Tom Williams was my operations manager, Jennifer Lopez handled all the administrative work, and several other former Morrison Building Company employees had joined my team. We had created a workplace culture based on respect, fairness, and shared success. Everyone who worked for the company got profit-sharing bonuses, excellent benefits, and the kind of job security that came from working for someone who valued loyalty. Frank Riverside had become a close business partner, with Riverside Construction serving as the exclusive distributor for our limestone in the residential construction market. The Hartman Development Group contract had been completed successfully, and we were now working on even bigger projects. As for Brittany Morrison, I heard through mutual acquaintances that she had moved to another state and was working as a low-level manager for someone else's construction company. The last I heard, she was struggling financially and still blaming other people for the failure of her father's business. I never spoke to her again, but I hoped that someday she would truly understand the lesson she had been taught. I hoped she would learn that success in business, and in life, comes from treating people well and building relationships based on trust and mutual respect. Standing there watching my employees work together as a team, I thought about Robert Morrison and the promise I had made to him. I had promised to help his daughter succeed, and in a way, I had kept that promise. I had given her every opportunity to succeed, but she had chosen a different path. The most satisfying part wasn't the money I was making from the limestone operation, though that was certainly nice. The most satisfying part was knowing that I had created something positive from a situation that started with cruelty and injustice. I had turned Brittany's betrayal into an opportunity to build a company that treated people the way Robert Morrison would have wanted them to be treated. Sometimes people ask me if I feel bad about what happened to Morrison Building Company. My answer is always the same: I feel bad for Robert Morrison, who spent 30 years building something wonderful, and I feel bad for the employees who lost their jobs when the company failed. But I don't feel bad for Brittany Morrison, because she made her own choices and created her own consequences. The limestone quarry that now occupied the site where Morrison Building Company used to be was a reminder that in business, as in life, you reap what you sow. Brittany had sown cruelty, deception, and disrespect, and she had reaped the destruction of everything her father had worked to build. I had sown loyalty, hard work, and integrity, and I had reaped success, prosperity, and the satisfaction of knowing that good people were being treated well. As I drove home that evening, past the sign that read Millbrook Limestone Extraction, a company built on respect and excellence, I thought about the lesson that this whole experience had taught me. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about hurting the people who have hurt you. Sometimes the best revenge is building something better than what they destroyed, treating people better than they treated you, and proving that kindness and integrity are more powerful than cruelty and greed. Brittany Morrison had fired me thinking she was getting rid of a problem. Instead, she had created her own downfall and given me the opportunity to build something amazing. And that, read it, is how my boss's daughter fired me as soon as she took over the company, until she learned one crucial detail. She learned that the person she thought was her enemy was actually the only one who could have saved her. She learned that treating people badly always comes back to hurt you eventually, and she learned that sometimes, the cost of that lesson is everything you thought you had. Thanks for listening.